Hello, everybody. I'm Sammie Purcell, Associate Editor with Rough Draft Atlanta, and I'm here with my co-host, Aaron Strand. And I forgot to say the name of the podcast. The name of the podcast is Crash Zoom. And we are here. How you doing, Aaron? Great start.
I am doing good. Yes, this is the Crash Zoom podcast, Sammie.
The Crash Zoom podcast.
Yeah, wake up, look alive. I know it's the end of the afternoon here. But I'm doing really good. I just came back from a weekend trip to New York City.
Yeah.
Took my daughter there for the very first time, my wife and I together. And, it was such a wonderful trip. It's a true testament to New York City because it was cold, it was rainy, the weather was absolutely miserable. Like it honestly probably could not have been worse. And we had such a wonderful time. My daughter loved it. She rode on the subway. She was such a trooper. I'm so proud of her. And I am just, I'm so conflicted because New York City is like the only place I go to that feels like home. And yet I financially feel like it's irresponsible to move there.
Wow.
So really trying to figure out that tension in my life. There's a parallel to the film world in there somewhere, but I can't really dissect it in this moment.
No, that's a lot to get into in the late afternoon on Monday. A lot of psychoanalyzing. Oh, gosh. Well, if this is your first episode of Crash Zoom, welcome. And if you listen today and you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also watch us on YouTube at Crash Zoom Podcast. And be sure to rate and review as well. That helps us out. But if this is your first episode of Crash Zoom, welcome. What we like to do here on Crash Zoom is take a look at what's going on in the film industry at a big picture level and try to boil down why that matters to the independent, small creator and filmmaker. So that's what we like to do. But before we get started on that, I'd like to start with a little question. Aaron, you've been in New York, but have you been watching anything?
So I haven't been watching. I didn't watch any films while I was there. I didn't even. I read two screenplays on the flight there and back. But I did get to go see some live theater. Now this was. I felt very, very well. I felt very, very cool because it was like, I'm there. It was a family trip. We're staying with our friends who also have a toddler. So like adult entertainment wasn't really like the priority, right? But it got to be the last night.
Mm-hmm.
They hired a babysitter for the kids, so we had a chance to go out. And I was trying not to push it, but I have a friend of mine who's an actor that I knew in Atlanta named Ryan Zerwanko, who's gone up to New York City, and he started this theater / film production studio called Adult Film and Theater. And I've been following their progress on Instagram for years, and it's really cool as like they start to get some recognition and get write-ups and there's cool stuff. And they happen to be doing this presentation of 3 one-acts called Other People's Lives. And so, look, like I've been going to this stuff my entire life, so I knew it was like a little risky to suggest to like my non-artist friends of like, hey, you want to go to a weird theater out in Bushwick and like see something? But they agreed. We went out and it was fantastic. Now it does have a film tie-in, okay? Because these 3 one-acts were all written by essentially filmmakers, and this company of adult film and theater were some of the strongest, best actors that I've seen in a while. So the first of these one-acts was written by Kit Zauer. I think that's how you pronounce her last name, Zauer. And she had a film, This Closeness, which premiered at South by in 2023, which is a fantastic film, wonderful little indie New York feature. So she wrote the first one-act, fantastic. Just amazing. The second one act, I didn't realize that the actress who was starring in it had also written it. Her name was April Consolo. I thought she was fantastic, and I thought the one act was so good. She is the lead actor of a film that premiered at Austin Film Fest, I want to say, called Cannibal Mukbang.
Good name.
Yeah, which is like a genre horror film that has like made the rounds. And then the final one act was written by a guy named Theodore Kalados, and his film Palookaville won Slam Dance Grand Jury in 2023. So all of this work is like being done by like very cool, very cutting edge filmmakers, people involved in film, and to see them not just put on like this was like great theater, like capital G great theater, and it was taking place in a warehouse at the very farthest edge of Bushwick. There was like 30 people in the audience, and to see all these artists so locked in, delivering such quality work, it filled me. It made me so excited. It filled me with so much inspiration. I can't tell you how alive I felt coming out of that room. And I'm so grateful that there's people like Adult Film, like these artists out here just doing incredible work beneath the radar. Like the underground is still alive and it still has something to say.
That's awesome. What a great experience. I'm so glad you got to go up there and at least have one night away from the kids. That's nice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I had great time with the kids as well. I took her
Of
to,
course,
I took
obviously.
my daughter rode the carousel from Past Lives. You know,
I saw that. I'm sure that meant a lot to her too. She loves Past Lives.
Dude, she wouldn't stop talking about it. Yeah, John Magaro is her favorite. So
of course,
huge Magaro head. Yeah, totally. Anyway, I've gone on long enough. Sammie, what have you been watching?
I've been watching a couple of early Atlanta Film Festival screeners that I can't really talk about much yet, but trying to kind of like get some pieces ready for those. But last week, I went to see a movie just for fun, which is not something that happens a lot. I have to go for work a lot. But we went and saw EFIS, which is the new movie from Carson Lund. It's a baseball movie, John Ephus, pitcher. I think I love baseball. I guess I should really preface with that. And if you don't love baseball, I don't know how much you might get out of this. So essentially what it's about is about a rec league in Douglas, Massachusetts. They play on Soldiers Field, and the film tracks their last game before the field is demolished to build a middle school. So it's just like the entire movie is one game of baseball, basically. And they kind of get away with pushing it a little bit. They're tied, so it goes in extra innings, et cetera, et cetera. But I just loved this movie. Like it reminded me of that great quote from Moneyball. It's like, how can you not be romantic about baseball? Like that's just how I felt about the movie the whole time. There's not a lot of plot. It's really just like guys hanging out, playing baseball, waiting for like this non-important but somehow so important era of their lives to end. Like it was just really lovely. There's a really great performance from a guy named Cliff Blake, who plays someone named Franny, who's like their only real fan. He's like the only real fan of this like rec baseball league, and he shows up to keep the scorecard at every game. And I thought he was just wonderful. Not a lot of famous guys. Like, I don't think anyone's like a name actor. Like, it's a lot of like unknowns. And I just thought it was really great. It was really lovely.
That's awesome. I remember seeing this film pop up on the festival circuit. I remember at the time I felt jealous about it. For some reason I saw it, I read the description, and I was like, oh, well, like these are the films that are getting programmed. We got to make low budget sports films now, which is such a stupid, selfish reaction. But I'm so glad that it's so wonderful, and it sounds like that at the core of it, it's about these sort of like these small, for lack of a better word, third spaces that are bring a community together and provide so much meaning to our lives, that it's not all about fame and glory at the MLB level. It's really about the sort of the tapestry of our lives. And
this is so stupid to say, and like when I say it, it's gonna sound like the movie is not this obvious or like overly explaining at all, but like to me it's the best example of like life or baseball as like analogous to life. Like there's a lot of waiting around. You're just kind of like waiting for something cool and exciting to happen, and it often doesn't. But like the point is like the anticipation, you know? I don't know. I found it really sentimental, kind of melancholy, really funny though. Like all these guys, like they really bounce off of each other well. They feel like guys from Massachusetts. It's great.
Nice. You do strike me as a woman with the soul of a guy waiting around at a baseball
game. From Massachusetts. Yeah. I'm wearing my Boston shirt today.
Oh, God.
This is Believe in Boston. Me and Ben Affleck have this shirt. I was, side note, I have this shirt because I was Ben Affleck for Halloween once. I was him, the famous kind of pap shot of Ben Affleck leaning over and like picking up all of those Dunkin' Donuts cups and bags. You know what I'm talking about? Where he's like looking miserably at the camera. It was during COVID, I think like the height of COVID. And he's wearing this shirt. you can easily find online. So
Wow.
I bought it and then bought a ton of Dunkin' Donuts so I could have all the bags and empty cups and stuff.
Oh, this was your Halloween costume, right? I forgot this time. I thought for a brief moment there in the middle of your story, I was like, wow, Sammie's just copping shirts off of Ben Affleck memes now.
No.
These are new podcast confessions.
It was for a reason, but it is quite a comfortable shirt, so I do wear it a lot.
Great.
All right, let's get into some news here, which we have to start with the biggest news, which is that the lineup has been announced for Cannes 2025.
Whoop, whoop.
This is exciting. I could like go through some of the heavy hitters, but I figured we could just like kind of bounce off each other and like talk about what we're excited about just to kind of get through it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I've got my picks or things that I'm looking for. And the great thing about Cannes is that their program is always so diverse that there's always some wild surprises that you just don't expect. So so there's things that we don't mention here that I'm sure will bubble up at the end of May that will suddenly get on our radar. So yeah, but what are you excited about? I know one thing you're very excited about.
Is it Mission Impossible?
Yeah, the Mission Impossible Final Reckoning.
I have to say, out of competition, but I'm pretty sure the last one played at Cannes too. I don't know. Did they just like love Tom Cruise?
I think so. I think the entire cinematic world pays fealty to Tom Cruise.
He's like the savior, you know?
Oh,
like,
God.
I guess.
I don't feel comfortable using that word in association with him.
I don't either. He's definitely a problematic fave, but in terms of like the movie guy, I guess I should say, was it? This is such a tangent. I think it was like Steven Spielberg who hugged him at that event one time and was like, "You're saving movie theaters."
Yes. Who could forget?
Oh my gosh, who could forget? But other than Mission Impossible, which I am very excited about, I'm excited about a lot of things. So the Phoenician Scheme, Wes Anderson's new movie, and the trailer for that was just released, and it looks very Wes Anderson, as to be expected, but I am super excited about it. It made me chuckle. I'm excited. It looks nice. I'm also excited. I think we're both probably excited about the new Kelly Reichardt movie, The Mastermind, which I believe stars Josh O'Connor. He's having a big year out at Cannes. I'll get to another one of those soon. Well, I'll just get to it now. I'm interested in The History of Sound, which stars, again, Josh O'Connor and Paul Mescal, kind of a period gay romance. Excited to see if that'll be any good. I'm very excited about, I'm going to butcher her last name, the new Julia Ducournau. Is that how you say her last name?
I'm not exactly sure where I've always thought it was Ducournau, but maybe
Ducournau. Please excuse my French, Julia, if you're listening. But I'm quite excited for her new movie, Alpha. It's set in the 1980s. It's about an 11-year-old girl who's rejected by her classmates after they believe that she's been infected with some strange disease. It feels very much like the type of movie she likes to make. I really like Raw, and really like Titan. That was one of my favorite movies a few years ago. So I'm excited about her new movie.
Yeah.
I'm interested in Spike Lee's High and Low remake. I don't know how to feel about it, but I'm interested. I'll be seated, you know. And then I'm excited about the new Richard Linklater, obviously, which again, French, can't say it, but it's about Nouveau Vague. I don't know how to say these things. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
But it's about like the making of Breathless, essentially.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm excited.
It's funny because I was looking at the official Cannes website release and they just call it New Wave.
New Wave. Okay,
yeah, which is so funny that he gives it a French title, but the French festival is like, yeah, we're just gonna call it New Wave.
New Wave. Okay, I'll call it that. That's a lot easier for me. But I'm excited about that one too. It's interesting. He's got like the other movie coming out about Richard Hart. He's got a lot of stuff going on. He is one of those kind of workhorse guys, but
he is. But even this is like a lot for him. But can we talk a little bit, because this really comes on the heels of last week's conversation about music biopics. And here we got Richard Linklater, a filmmaker that I adore, that every cinephile pretty much adores, coming out with this film nerd biopic. I cannot genuinely say I am excited to watch a film about the making of Breathless. It sounds like the most circle jerky prospect ever. But Richard Linklater's involved, so it's like I'm gonna see it.
That's
but
my thing. He doesn't strike me as like he has never really struck me as that kind of guy. So I'm like, what's your take here? I'm seated. I'm interested. You know?
Yeah, but like, how could this not be the same? Fall into all the same traps that we talked about last week with this sort of glorifying, half truth, dreamy rendering of this. Because I looked at the cast list and it's like every French New Wave filmmaker is like going to be featured in this story in some way. Like Agnes Varda is going to be there, they're all going to be there. And, but like, this is going to be through the eyes of clearly a man that loves Breathless. Like, so how is this not going to be sort of overly romantic slop?
Well, I don't think overly romantic necessarily deems it slop, but I get the music biopic problem, but I don't necessarily really have that problem when filmmakers are making movies about filmmaking, because it feels less like from a distance, like they're in it, so like they have a better understanding of like the highs and I don't know, like I don't think really the same problems exist.
I really disagree. When I see a film about filmmaking, I'm like, yikes, red flag. Either like film about filmmaking or film about writers.
I think there's a difference between a movie about filmmaking and like a movie about like the quote unquote magic of movies. Like those I do think like tend to be a little rosy-eyed, but like I think movies that are about again, I can't really talk about it much, but I just watched one today. They just tend to like be a little more interesting in my opinion. I don't know.
Okay, so I could see how a movie about movie making, in a very immediate level that's not referencing some sort of great film of the past could be, it can be very alive. It can be a very insightful reflection upon the medium that we are all engaging in. But this seems to me like it has the setup of all the problems of a rock biopic, in that like rock bands live more in our fantastical imagination than they live in our real everyday life. And Jean-Luc Godard's production of Breathless from 1963 definitely lives far more in our imagination of Breathless than like we could ever get close to actually touching the reality of Breathless. Now, granted, like that's the power of story making. Like we're supposed to be making, dreams about reality, but like, I don't know. I'm just saying the same thing over and over again. I smell a stinker. That's all I'm going to say. I smell a stinker.
I don't know. We'll see. He again strikes me as like a pretty intentional picker, even though he does make a lot of stuff. So I'm interested to see what he has to say.
I hope to God he proves me wrong. As always, like we're always rooting for the movies to be great. Like I truly, truly, truly hope he proves me wrong.
Yeah. He doesn't strike me as navel gazy, so hopefully that's not a problem.
Totally.
But, all right. What are you excited about? What else you got going on here?
Well, you definitely highlighted a bunch of them. Total snub from you on my boy Joachim Trier. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm gonna be honest. This is like
being really bad,
dude. This is just like the trash pronunciation show. Crash Zoom, more like Trash Zoom. You know what I'm saying? Please do not comment that on our Apple Podcast. If you comment that, I will hunt you down. Okay. But Trier has a new film called Sentimental Value with lead actress from Worst Person in the World, Renata Rensby, and I am so excited for this movie. It has already been picked up by Neon, which, considering that they have won 6 consecutive Palme d'Ors through movies that they have picked up before the festival, seems like we got ourselves a winner. And given how much I love The Worst Person in the World, and just love Trier's entire filmography, I'm beyond excited for this movie. And then, I wanted to shout out, first of all, the Cannes Film Festival for bringing in films from these two countries, but it's also just something that we try to be pretty globally focused on this show and talk about cinema, from a global perspective, despite, being trapped in our American bubble. But the two markets that produce the most films, that they don't make the most capital, but they have the most productions, are India and Nigeria. Nigeria is really interesting because I was reading more about this. I'm pretty ignorant, but a lot of their films are made for TV movies. Like they don't have a lot of cinema like theaters, but it's this huge production of made for TV movies, and the population of Nigeria is absolutely massive. We've got an Indian film coming into Cannes. This is Homebound by Neeraj Gaiwan. Which follows up from they had 2 Indian films last year with Santosh and All We Imagine as Light. But before that, there was like kind of a long drought of Indian productions getting into Cannes. So it's very cool to see that. And I always think it's really interesting when Bollywood, it's not like traditional Bollywood productions, but Indian productions go for this sort of like high art stuff. You really get some interesting results. So I'm very excited about Homebound. And then there's a Nigerian film in the festival called My Father's Shadow by Akinola Davies Jr., which is about a family reunion taking place during a Nigerian election in the 90s, which also sound really, really interesting. I find myself knowing a lot of Nigerian first generation immigrants in my life right now. Always fascinated to sort of learn more about Nigeria. And so I'm really excited about this movie because I don't think I've seen like a traditional Nigerian film despite the massive film market that exists in that country. So really looking forward to My Father's
It's called
Shadow.
Nollywood, right? Is that kind of the right name? Nollywood?
I don't know. I don't actually know.
I'm pretty sure it is. There was a movie, and I didn't get a chance to see it, but it's like, because obviously like Atlanta and I think Lagos are sister cities. So there's like a kind of a connection there. And there was a Nigerian movie. I'm going to look up the name of this because it's bothering me, but there's a Nigerian movie that had its premiere here like back in the 70s. And then it was lost for a while and then came back recently. Things Fall Apart, I believe, is the name of the movie. But it came back here recently. There was an exhibition. It's actually still going. It's at, it's a collaboration between Goethe Zentrum and then like the French Alliance of Atlanta. So like basically the German and like kind of French like cultural kind of bodies in Atlanta have partnered to bring a photography exhibition of Things Fall Apart, film stills from the movie. And I believe there's an opportunity to view the film that might have already passed, but if anyone is in Atlanta and wants to check out that exhibition, it does run until April 25th.
That's really, really cool. And this is not Things Fall Apart based on the Chinua Achebe novel.
It is.
It is? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. I'm actually just seeing it played at Terra Theater in March. So we just missed it. Oh my God. That's really, really cool. It is based on the Chinua Achebe novel. I read the Chinua Achebe novel in high school, but
cool.
I'm totally ignorant of this film. That's fascinating. I got to check this out.
Right. There's like a connection with Maynard Jackson, and I think one of the producers was perhaps like his brother-in-law or something like that. And so like that's the kind of the Atlanta connection.
Amazing.
But
yeah, Atlanta, sneaky influence on film history. The very first building ever built to house a theatrical experience was built in Atlanta at the Cotton States World Fair in 1895. Now, granted, like cinemas had, because it was the very early days of projectors. So the very first projector was put up in a bar in like late 1894. But this competing projector makers wanted to debut their projector at the Cotton Estates Fair, and so they bought one of the last plots available where Piedmont Park currently is, and they built the building to house their projector and play their movies. And so it's technically the very first theater, building specifically for this device ever built. Yeah. And then it burned down like 2 weeks later.
Wow. What a story. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I did a podcast for Archive Atlanta, one of the great Atlanta history podcasts, like all talking about like Atlanta's lost cinema history. And I briefly was like petitioning the Piedmont Park organization of like, we need a plaque, like we need a marker for this history. No one's really that excited about it, but maybe one day, maybe one day my fight will come to fruition.
Just keep pushing,
I'll try.
All right. I guess we should mention a few that did not make the cut for reasons unknown. Probably a lot of them because they weren't like ready and they'll premiere some other time,
Yeah.
But so like the Dime I Love, the Lynn Ramsey movie, is a pretty big one. I think all of her movies have premiered at Cannes, but it's probable that this is like just not ready, and that's kind of the problem, you know?
I think this is going to be, this is either going to be a late announcement, like a late edition, or they're just going to hold off till like Toronto. Like if it can't be done, because there was a lot of online sort of freaking out, like, oh my God, where's Lynn Ramsey? Where's Lynn Ramsey?
I bet she's just still editing.
Yeah,
just chopping away.
Yeah.
Park Chan-wook's new movie. They didn't. I think they wrapped in like January, so it kind of makes sense that they're not here. Like, and then Jim Jarmusch's new movie with, I believe, Cate Blanchett and Adam Driver.
Yep.
That might also be a late edition. I think he's been working on that for quite some time, but we'll see.
I would not be surprised to see that a late one as well. What someone who I don't think is going to be added to the Cannes lineup is Mr. Terrence Malick, who has been churning away on The Way of the Wind.
I wasn't even going to mention
his biblical epic about Jesus, which has been editing for 6 years.
Yeah. Just like, all right, go for it, my guy.
I don't know why the rumor mill was speculating. And I mean, we're talking rumor mill. This is like the rumors of like 100 people on Twitter that speculate about
Terrence Malick's new movie.
Speculate about Terrence Malick movies. But some of the rumor mill was churning that like, oh, this might be the year that Malick's coming back. But they've also, because they've only done Tree of Life and Hidden Life at Cannes. They've ignored all of his other like meandering late career kind of movies. I don't know, Malick. We're always rooting for you, bud. Like, but let's wrap this up.
Keep editing.
No. Let's wrap this up.
Until you think it's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. All right. Anything else to say on Cannes? Got anything else?
Nothing. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the buzz is about. I would love to go.
Oh, please. That is my dream.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
One day we'll be on the corset to, arguing with each other.
It'll be great.
Yeah.
It'll be so fun.
Manifest.
We'll be eating croissants. It'll be great.
We'll be doing lots of other French tropes. Yeah.
Wearing berets. All right. Let's move on to this next little tidbit. So this kind of comes as a little bit of a conglomeration from some different sources, but essentially we're going to be talking a little bit about The Studio, which is Seth Rogen's new Apple Plus TV show. So I was reading Matt Bellany's newsletter, his Puck newsletter, and it linked to this clip on Stephen Colbert. So Seth Rogen was on Colbert recently talking about The Studio, which apparently, he's on a talk show, so he's like talking it up a bit, but it has apparently raised some hackles in Hollywood. According to Seth, he's been getting a lot of calls about like, is this character based on me? What is the story from? Et cetera, et cetera. For a little more background, the story in the TV show itself, Rogen plays a newly minted head of studio, basically, who has to kind of like deal with the tension, I guess you could say, between art and commerce. So his character loves movies, but when he becomes in charge of movies, he necessarily has to make decisions that cause movies to be worse. And that is an important turn of phrase because on this episode of Colbert, he outed, I think he's in charge of 20th Century Studios, so Steve Asbell. He outed him as the source of one of his character's signature lines from the show, which was, quote, "I got into this because I love movies and now it's my job to ruin them," end quote. I haven't watched The Studio, or I watched like the first episode, but I haven't watched much else. Have you watched The Studio? Have you been studio pilled?
No. I've just seen it, on social media or whatever. I would like to watch it. I have not watched a TV show or like sat down to really watch a TV show in years.
A pod watch as a possibility.
Ooh.
Like a weekly, let's check in with The Studio.
I think this is a great idea.
Could be fun.
Yeah, let's do a little studio watch. I mean, we're really behind, Sammie. We got to catch up.
We are, I know. I'm behind on everything. I still haven't finished Severance. Like TV is hard for me these days.
Oh God. I kind of despise the implicit work of keeping up with it, and the like when it's all available at once, like expectations of the binging and the binging.
Right.
I don't know. So, but we could do that. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, we could.
Okay,
We'll have
cool.
to figure it out off mic as to how exactly it's going to work. But I think we could definitely do a little studio watch together.
Okay, that would be fun. Awesome. All right. So, what did you have the chance to watch this Rogan on Colbert clip?
I did. It's very funny. You know,
Okay.
he's yucking it up. He's spilling a little bit of tea. I know that there was a lot of speculation that Catherine O'Hara's character in the film, which is like another exec, is based on Amy Pascal.
I believe Seth Rogen's character has taken over her job is kind of their relationship.
Right.
But,
So that was speculated that it's Amy Pascal, who we talked about a few weeks ago, who's now taken, co-producer of the new Bond franchise with David Heyman. Anyway, so yeah, lots of sort of like inside Hollywood, fart sniffing kind of jokes. So good for them. I do think it's really funny, but it ultimately like brings up, and you wrote this in the rundown, the studio is interesting because it exposes this conflict between art and commerce that exists within modern American entertainment. And that dynamic between art and commerce, like, do you feel that it's a sort of art versus commerce kind of relationship?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like it doesn't have to be, but it often ends up becoming just that. Like, I don't know. Like, I think of like, I feel like the 90s is sort of like blockbuster heyday, or at least that kind of is like from my, that's my kind of childhood blockbuster. And at that point, like, I don't know if you want to call like Independence Day or something like that high art. But if I look at like that kind of commercial Hollywood output compared to, I don't know, like the Minecraft movie, like there's a sense of artistry in one. Or I shouldn't use Minecraft. I haven't seen it yet. The Mario movie, there is like a sense of artistry in one that I don't think is like present in the other, if that makes sense. So I do feel like, and it's another thing where I'm like, people have probably been saying this since like Jaws came out. Like this is always the conversation, right? Like it's an ever going, like, can you work in tandem? Do they have to be separate? And I think like I'm feeling a little more cynical lately with the big kind of budget output. And there's a very funny, again, I've watched the first episode. There's a pretty funny bit in the first episode about kind of Martin Scorsese's new movie. He wants to make the Jim Jones biopic. And Seth Rogen has to make the Kool-Aid Man movie. So he, in an attempt to try to make that a more high art kind of movie, he is like, well, what if it was the Jim Jones movie, which, drink the Kool-Aid, and we just called it Kool-Aid, and no one will ever know I'm making the Kool-Aid movie, but it's really Martin Scorsese's Jim Jones biopic. Obviously, it doesn't work, and he has to, like, disappoint one of his heroes, which is kind of like, that is the tension, right? Like, if you're looking at someone like Martin Scorsese and being like, well, that's, like, my artistic king, and you're a new producer coming in and being like, well, I'm so sorry, we have to make the Kool-Aid Man movie. We can't give you the money you want for your like very thoughtful, very interesting, very complex, whatever it might be.
That is hilarious.
It's really rambling.
No. I mean, it's a great point. It's a great point. Although any fan of Jim Jones history will know that they in fact used Flavor-Aid, the knockoff brand. I
did know that.
Not Kool-Aid, but that's fine. Drink the Flavor-Aid. It was the Flavor-Aid.
The Flavor-Aid.
No, it is really interesting. I always try to I try to not get too myopically focused on the film industry at large when talking about these sort of big issues, because I do think we are absolutely prisoners of the moment. These are absolutely dynamics. I mean, back in the 1920s, people were talking about how the movie, like the glory of the 19-teens movies had fallen off, and it's all just a bunch of gimmicks now. So the conversations have been going on forever. But however, the movie industry does reflect the culture at large. And in the same way that we are seeing massive income inequality in America, and we are seeing the results of this massive income inequality and technological disruption and its effect on our democratic institutions, our ability to communicate with each other, our ability to find common experiences with one another, and our language to discuss things with one another. The movies are doing the same thing. And so we're having this bifurcation of the movie industry And so I was thinking about that bifurcation where we have the big budgets and the low budgets, right? And it's like, and they're just getting further and further apart.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this a little bit more because we're going to talk a little bit about Anora's PVOD window. I'm sure everyone's so excited to hear about it. But these two things are getting further apart. And so it's not so much that it's art versus commerce. I think it's more about there's two businesses. There's on the big side, it's how do we artify a commodity? And on the little side, it's how do we commoditize a piece of art?
Yeah. Which I'm way more kind of interested in the latter, right? As I think you probably are too, just because like we want people to be interested in like, I guess like more artistic things or have like or at least in my opinion, like have the big budget things feel more artistic in nature, which like I do think that is something that in general has been a little bit lost. I feel like I know we talked about Greta Gerwig and like the Narnia thing, but I think what is actually really interesting about Greta Gerwig is that like she feels like someone to me who wants to like work at that ginormous budget level and keep like the artistic side of her like still alive. You know what I mean? Like that's a big budget filmmaker who still has a voice compared to like a lot of the other stuff I feel like we're kind of fed. And it's really like Marvel, right? Because they've got like a kind of house style. And that's like where you lose a lot of like artistic flair. And when those movies are your only kind of representation of like big budget filmmaking, which they were for so long, I think that's where like that problem starts to really become apparent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I get what you're saying there. I'm at, in a way that, I mean, maybe it's just because I think about the commodification of art so much. In this conversation, I'm actually a little bit more interested in the artifying of a commodity, because to me that speaks to the ultimate systemic problem that's at the core of the movie industry, which is that when you're trying to artify a commodity, you're still beholden to like the same market forces that every market has been beholden to since the beginning of time, and that Adam Smith described long ago, which is like supply and demand, right? And when we have, and I know I've said this a million times on the podcast, but I'm going to keep saying it, for a long time, the movies were contained within a system where the supply was contained by the physical medium that contained the movies, right? So there was these limitations to the supply, which gave studios, distributors, and theaters this exclusivity over that supply. And that exclusivity drives up value, that it bounds supply, it limits supply. It's a scarcity. It's a definition of scarcity that increases the value and increases the perceived value on behalf of the consumer. And now we live in this digitized world where every movie is infinitely scalable and they're distributable at zero marginal cost, and it has destroyed the exclusivity, which then in terms have forced big budget films to rely on eventizing the movie, but not in the way that 70s, 80s, and 90s blockbusters and 2000s blockbusters had to eventize the movie. They're now having to eventize in ways that play in the rules of the internet. And the Minecraft movie, although neither of us have seen that movie, and neither of us, I think, are exactly running to the theater to see that movie, we've certainly seen all the memes and all these videos of people trashing the theaters coming out of that movies, which is wild and which is crazy, but like, the memification of cinematic events is like a totally ass backwards way to market your movie. And like, while we can all be like, yay, Minecraft movie like is going to make $1 billion and like save the 2025 box office. But it's like, it's people are buying tickets just so they can get their own content of people throwing popcorn and drinks at movie theaters. And this is where the theaters, I think, the theaters, the studio owners, and the system is really, really breaking down. I would love to see a little bit more circling of the wagons and more out of the box ways to try to like create this exclusivity within a marketplace of infinite supply.
Yeah, I do think. And I mean, I haven't watched the show, but from what I understand about it, that I feel like what you just said, like that kind of tension is kind of what they're trying to get at. So I think we should do this little rewatch, or not rewatch, first watch. I think it would be fun. But also, speaking of that, Minecraft trend. I don't know if you saw this. There's like obviously like theaters, I feel like all over the US. I was at the dentist this morning and Good Morning America was on, which is where I saw this. But um, they, all the theaters in America and the States are sort of like, if you like, please don't do this. Like, please stop. Everyone stop. There's a theater in the UK that was considering like holding screenings where it is appropriate to do this and screenings where it's not. Like trying to like,
Yeah.
we can't stop people from doing this. So why don't we like give them a space where it's allowed? And I thought that was an interesting way to like approach the issue.
Yeah. I mean,
it's wild.
I mean, but like, Buddy from Regal at CinemaCon was like talking about like that they were open to having theaters to allow you to smoke weed and like text on your phones, like designated theaters for like texting weed smoking.
Just texting and weed smoking. What two weird choices.
Dude, sounds like my personal hell, my personal cinema going hell. There's two things I absolutely hate: people checking their phones during a movie and the smell of pot smoke lingering in the air.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't even know. Like, I don't even know if the fun of trashing a theater over Chicken Jockey is like, does it still have its same like zhuzh if you're designated?
Allowed to do it?
Yeah,
right. That I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting response, and probably like in the situation, because people aren't going to stop doing it, right? So like maybe the only response you can really give, even if like it's not going to work ultimately, I don't know. I was just like, wow, they're really desperate for everything to calm down.
Yes. Yeah. But then, on the other side, when you're talking about like commodifying a piece of art, it leads into all these other problems, because then as opposed to like these sort of supply demand relationship constraints and the infinite supply problems, I mean, you still have those problems that everything in the digital world is infinitely scalable. But then it's really more around issues of like discoverability, of accessibility, of like where are these things available, and that ends up funneling people into the same traditional bottlenecks that there have always been, which is like people are overly reliant on tastemakers, niche subcultures. I do believe that we are in an era where the gatekeeping around art film is less than it was certainly in the like peak video store era, where it was like the whole mentality was like, oh, you haven't seen so and so, like go kill yourself, But like, so we're not there anymore, but it's still very gate kept, and like the gates have just shifted to like new things, and we're relying on this weird sublanguage of social signifiers about like what going to a certain movie and what posting on Letterboxd like means to your identity. I don't know. It's all very, very strange, and clearly like nobody has figured out a formula to make it reliable and sustainable, and that's why we're in an industry of structural decline. So
right. Culture as identity thing is really interesting, and I think ultimately bad.
Really?
Like,
you think so?
Making a movie, I just
wait.
So I think there's like
explain a little bit more about what you mean.
What I mean. So like I mean like the structuring of your identity around like a certain piece of pop culture. Like I think of stan culture a lot, like, which obviously is like the most extreme version of that. But like, if I go online and disparage Katy Perry, a million people come at me online and dox me and because they've like made Katy Perry their whole identity. That's more of what I'm talking about, but that's obviously like an extreme version. I think that can kind of lead to like weird instances of the way people like identify themselves in relation to celebrities or movies or music or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's really parasocial, you might say.
For sure. Very parasocial. What's weird is that in the age of the internet, that so many of those communities have formed around personality cults, be it Katy Perry, be it Taylor Swift, be it the president of the United States right now. Like it's all very, very weird and tied up within personality. Whereas historically, and I get we're through the looking glass, there is no going back. It was the fact that people identified as like, I am a rock and roll lover, or even like I am a fan of this band, or I will go to a music festival that features, psychedelic rock, that allowed a pipeline a actual avenue for artists to turn profitable, because there were these people that like identified as that in real life, you know, and but again, like, talk about all these things existing within a, you know, this is just a small part of a much bigger picture. I mean, we're in an era where the middle class has been so systemically eroded away that who has the expendable income to like actually devote themselves to a piece of pop culture outside of posting on the internet, which is free. You know, like, I don't know if you saw this recently, but, you know, 60% of all the tickets that were sold at Coachella this year were paid through financing plans, which is like horribly disturbing and definitely like flashing a red signal that we're heading toward a recession, but is also indicative of the fact that like people that go to Coachella these days, like, they're not like, you know, they're there for the overall like pan cultural experience vibe. It's not like they're dedicated and they're able to give over their money to support artists. Not that it should be a relationship that's based on charity. It's about the like the cost benefit exchange between artists and predominantly middle class listeners that has sustained the art industry of the 20th century, and that is under a systemic assault in the 21st century.
Yeah, I have absolutely no desire to go to Coachella. Like, it just, I used to go
Sammie,
to Bonnaroo. Like,
welcome to your
times.
30s.
And I loved Bonnaroo, and I still think I would go back to Bonnaroo if I didn't have to sleep in a tent. But
welcome
Coachella just has
to
never.
Your 30s.
All right. Well, speaking, I guess, of commodifying art, let's jump into this Anora conversation. I do feel like we talk about this a lot, but it is important in kind of the grand scheme of this podcast. So this is an article from The Wrap. It's by Jeremy Fuster, and it's essentially about Aurora's kind of road to profitability, basically. Anora. I'm so sorry. Not Sleeping Beauty, my bad. Although Disney princess, you know. But Anora's road to profitability, basically. We talked about this, and it's obviously a little bit of a different example, but Wicked PVOD, which is going to come into play here, also had like a huge kind of effect on Wicked sort of popularity. But basically what Anora did, they had a 70-day theatrical exclusive window in which I think it grossed just $20.4 million domestically. Then after the Oscars, they had a bit of a bump, I think about $5 million. Let me make sure I'm getting that right.
I think it was 15 million pre-Oscars and then 20 million
and
total.
Then the 5 million for 20 total. Okay, so that 70-day theatrical is sort of that entirety of that experience. And then the film was put on PVOD, which is, what does that stand for again? Sorry, I'm losing my brain. Paid video, premium.
Premium video on demand.
Thank you so much. And Neon refused to talk to The Wrap for this particular article, but quote, an individual with knowledge told The Wrap that Anora has made over $10 million from PVOD sales, enough to recoup the $18 million spent on marketing, end quote. So the $18 million that nobody could stop talking about, I feel like, once that became public knowledge. But yeah, this article is essentially just kind of like explaining kind of the way to profitability for a smaller movie like Anora and how that has sort of evolved. But I think it's a lot of what you, Aaron, kind of talk about a lot is it's like similar to the old pipeline, but just evolved for like a new era, I guess.
Well, similar to the old pipeline, just a lot less. It's just a lot smaller. So this article was a little interesting, and I was a little confused by it. I'm going to be honest, because it starts off by saying like Anora has an Oscar winner. Anora has just become profitable, and I don't really understand how that's possible, considering that they made 20 million domestic, they made 56 million international, and then they made 10 million reportedly from PVOD sales. So that's a total of 86 million against a $6 million budget and an $18 million marketing campaign. And so if we are, so that leaves, so that's a $24 million budget recoup
So
and marketing recoup.
there's also, I think, I'm trying to, because that also kind of struck me, but I think there just might be some numbers we're not seeing. Like there's a quote here where he says, the studio's take from the total box office estimated 8 million with another estimated 7 million for a streaming deal on Hulu. But yeah, I was sort of like,
All that I'm
and
saying
I'm not
is
a
that,
good mather, so I was a little stumped by the math.
listen, from the numbers that are given in this article, Anora has made
Yeah.
$86 million theatrical and premium video on demand. That's not including their streaming deal, which is like another revenue stream
Right.
from Hulu. So, but let's just take the 86 million. If that sets against the Oscar campaign, 18 million, and the budget 6 million, that's still 62 million on the table that is like getting divided up between distributors, theaters.
Yeah.
That's still a fair amount of money to sort of chop up
Mhm.
there, especially when you're setting it against a $6 million budget. So I don't really understand the premise of the article, which is that like Anora has just become profitable. I wonder if that was like a little bit clickbaity just to get us into the door. All this to say is that like PVOD is a critical stage within the chain of distribution that has long sustained the film and entertainment industry. As a quick refresher, a mere 15 years ago, a film had all these opportunities to make money. We talk all about box office receipts and we focus on the domestic box office because traditionally that has been a huge driver of a film's success. But for decades, the American film market largely existed on home video, and it wasn't just home video. You had a film would go from a first run studio to a second run studio. They would go to airplanes and hotels. They would go to premium cable. They would go to home video, and then finally they would go to cable distribution. And every stop along this pipeline was an opportunity to make some serious money from your product. And all of this was made possible because films were only available on the physical medium that contained them. Now, in the digital world where films are going directly to streaming, it doesn't take a genius to realize that every stop upon the distribution pipeline has been erased. It has been jumped over just to instant digital mass distribution, which costs absolutely nothing. That's the great conundrum of the internet. It doesn't cost anything to produce a second of the thing that you've already made. So enter this the new windowing world that everyone is fighting about, and what we just talked about. What was the tension point of CinemaCon this year, which is do theaters demand a certain length of a theatrical window, and why are studios so focused on not having a required 45-day theatrical window and really wanting to tinker with this PVOD window? Now, from the studio's perspective, it would make a lot of sense because that theatrical gross, they only get a part of that. They have to split a lot of that with the theater, right? So whatever theater gross is there, the number they're getting is going to be about 40% of that number. Whereas a PVOD experience, especially if they're owning the platform, if the studio owns the platform that the premium video on demand product is featured, they get 100% of that take. And it creates they're incentivized to hoard their product onto these frictionless distribution platforms. But I do really think that we're in a situation right now where, despite the encouraging numbers of premium video on demand, it really does a lot of damage to the holistic nature of the ecosystem. And I really think that studios are sort of missing the forest for the trees by overly tinkering with the PVOD distribution window and relying on that for their personal take of the overall film gross.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously like this 70-day window thing is not the norm now, right? Like I'm sure it feels like something Sean Baker might have like really pushed for. I mean, he talked about theatrical release like so much during that entire press tour and in a lot of his speeches. What really, and this is me kind of putting on award brain, but what kind of really struck me, and it tapped like a memory for me about when I was catching up on the Best Picture nominees. So Neon released Anora on PVOD in the Academy window, while holding it back from streaming services. So it wasn't available to stream for free. It was just available on PVOD. And I remember kind of in that window of time when I was rewatching those movies that a lot of movies were still in theaters at the time. Like they weren't hitting streaming services or even PVOD until like right before the Oscars. I think Nickel Boys was like that, if I'm not mistaken. The Brutalists maybe was like a week before the Oscars or something like that. But that is very interesting to me as like there's a bit sort of in this article as like how are people catching up on those Academy Award winners or those Academy Award nominees, I should say. And it definitely is at home. Like I was doing my rewatch with my friend and he hadn't seen any of them. And I don't think he saw Nickel Boys because he couldn't. He like didn't have time to go out to the theater and like it was only available for streaming for like 2 days before, right? So that's like another piece of this to me that is interesting. And I don't know how much the Oscars, I mean, I guess we kind of do know monetarily how much the Oscar win had an effect on it. 5 million extra in theaters, I guess, and then like all of those PVOD numbers. So I see your point maybe about like not seeing the forest through the trees, I guess, and just like kind of getting excited about this based on like the few successes that we've had. But I do think that's an interesting, I guess, release strategy in terms of like if you're marketing an awards movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if you've already summited the mountain and you have this
Mm-hmm.
opportunity of extreme audience to drive extreme urgency in the audience with like I've got to watch all the best picture nominees before the
Mm-hmm.
Oscars. I mean, I totally understand doing this PVOD release window
Mm-hmm.
right before the award ceremony or in coordination with that. It makes total sense to me. I think it's more when I think about that like at CinemaCon, we had, the CEO of Universal Studios sitting on stage saying, I refuse to commit to a 45-day window because every
Yeah.
film is different and we want to tinker with bespoke PVOD releases for each film and we're trying to time them all. And that's where I think that like that the danger in sort of like how do we algorithmically squeeze, like every dollar that we think we can in the short term out of each
Mm-hmm.
movie to maximize our quarterly profit reports.
Yeah.
That mentality is doing and will continue to do extreme structural damage to the theatrical model. And right now
Yeah.
the theatrical model like is in bad shape and like that we the theaters are losing right now and
Mm-hmm.
we are in danger of experiencing a massive contraction within the
Mm-hmm.
theatrical experience. And this is a system that sort of needs scalability in order to continue to function. But the reason why I think this is like, and I'm kind of like really like in galaxy brain mode today with some of the topics. But this is like got me thinking about, like from a short-term quarterly view, they're absolutely right. Like theaters are dying. Why would we invest in them? Netflix has this quote unquote frictionless experience of direct to consumer products and look at their stock price. It's going to the moon. Why can't that be me? I totally understand why
Yeah.
every boss who has a boss is prioritizing that. But at the same time, like that's the same mentality that's allowing like all these institutions are dying left and right. Like democracy is dying right in front of us, is being taken away
Mm-hmm.
right in front of us. And does that mean that we should all just like jump in and like, yeah, let's ride the waves of authoritarianism. Let's see where it goes. Like, and and at the end of the day, even though things look bleak right now, I would be willing in the long term to bet on the human need and not the human want, not the human desire, but the human need to get together and experience things as a group. Like I think that
Yeah.
this has long historical precedent that I would be willing to bet on. So does that necessarily mean that the theatrical experience of the late 20th century is going to survive exactly the way it looked throughout the 80s and 90s? I no idea. I certainly wouldn't bet on that specific outcome, but I would definitely take a long-term bet on the future of communal moving image entertainment and storytelling. And if I were a studio distribution person, I would try to be keeping that in mind as opposed to only focusing on the short-term results.
Yeah. I do hope there's at least also kind of a lesson learned here that perhaps relates exclusively to the 70-day theatrical window. Like that is still kind of an important part of the equation there. So I hope, I'd love to see more of that. All right. Aaron, you sent this to me, and I figured you were maybe ready for some clowning. So I'm going to introduce it and let you take it away. Saturday Night Live is coming to the UK. So a UK edition of Saturday Night Live is going to launch on Sky in 2026. Lorne Michaels, does it here. He's going to serve as executive producer for the UK adaptation. The London-based version will follow the same live format. And take it away, Aaron. How are you feeling about this?
Well, you're setting me up. You're teeing me up for an epic spike over the volleyball net here. But I got to be honest with you. I'm going to zag here. I actually kind of like this. I kind of like this.
What a fun zag!
Yeah, I'm kind of digging this. So, like, listen, is in all likelihood this will fail, and everyone will clown on it, and I get it, but it's very risky. Like a lot of the crossover stuff between the two sister countries here, like, falls flat on its face. But I love the history of British sketch television, and there's already been like endless think pieces about British comedy's different and they do it different, right. and it's sketch comedy doesn't work. But I mean, like, come on, like, we've got Monty Python, obviously that's like the low-hanging fruit, but my personal favorite was always the Catherine Tate Show, which is some of the funniest sketch comedy that I've ever seen. And there is a small but measurable window that I think this could really work, and frankly show Saturday Night Live, the American version, for some of the things that I think have become really problematic with it. Namely that I think the American Saturday Night Live is bloated. I think that people focus on, like, well, the American Saturday Night Live can only function because it has this massive budget and it enables all these like cast, the massive cast on retainer, the massive writer rooms, the massive costume departments. It spends more money than it makes. Like, it's unsustainable. Well, the British version is going to be way more leaned down. It's going to be way more cut back. The budget's going to be much smaller. But I think the American one suffers from its bloat. I mean, the cast turnover has never been slower on the American show, because, like, why would a cast member want to leave? Like, it's such a cushy job, and the rest of the entertainment industry is so non-guaranteed. So you end up with someone like Kenan Thompson, who, like, yeah, like, I like Kenan Thompson. I grew up with Kenan Thompson. I've been watching him since he was on all that. But, like, he's been on SNL for over 20 years.
For
like,
so long.
Come on. Yeah. Like, one of the core values of SNL is new blood and, like, getting new comics in there. And it's really a process of discovery. And if there is an opportunity for more comedic talent out of the UK to get discovered, and then for American audiences to become privy to them through a recognized brand like SNL, even if they change the name, I think that's great. Like, it was a British sketch show called The 11 O'Clock Show that gave us Ricky Gervais and Sacha Baron Cohen, or at least was like their first major breakthrough. And there's an opportunity to recreate that. So I'm very excited. It will need a visionary producer. There's already some speculation that James Longman is being tabbed as the producer. Don't know him personally, but when your main credit is The Late Late Show with James Corden, it does not get me excited.
No.
Yeah, because
I'm not a James Corden girl.
Oh, he's the worst.
No, some of those bits, I guess, are successful, and obviously it'll be like a totally
2013
different show, right? I know. I don't know. Obviously, and he was like big in London. They loved him over there, right? I don't know.
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they hated him.
I was like, can you take him back? I don't want him here.
No. Yeah. I don't know.
But yeah, it doesn't really inspire excitement in me, I'll say. But we'll see. I don't know. I hope you're right. I'll definitely check it out. Like, I'm excited to see what it's like. British humor is very different, but I do find it very funny. So yeah, I'll check it out.
I'm rooting for the British SNL. I really, really am.
Our last quickie update for the day. This is pretty exciting. I think Tom Cruise is mad, though, because this won't happen until after the last Mission Impossible movie comes out. But the Academy has announced that it will include a stunt design category starting with the 100th Oscars. So that'll be in 2027. Sadly for Tom, the new Mission Impossible comes out this year. He will not be eligible.
Yeah.
But I guess, I this feels like it's been in the works for like probably quite some time, or at least it's been a discussion that they've been having. But it just reminded me of all the press that the Fall Guy did a couple years ago was just like surrounding this, like, let's honor stunt people, which is
Yeah.
something I quite liked about kind of the conversation around that movie. They took it quite seriously, and I thought it was very great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited about this.
Yeah, me too. Those guys from the Fall Guy, David Leitch and Chris O'Hara, they're really taking a victory lap.
I'm sure.
On this.
Yeah.
No, I think this is awesome. I think that I think that it's very well deserved, and more than anything, like I think it brings more popular films within the Oscar purview,
Right.
which is a really, really good thing. Obviously, we've got the new casting category that will be in next year's program. This is bringing the total categories up to 25, I believe, which definitely leaves the governing board with some decisions about like how they're going to streamline this television product.
Sure.
So how do you think they're going to solve that pickle?
You know my thoughts on this. I'm like, show them all, but I don't know. I do
Four
think...
and a half hour Academy Awards.
That's what I want. But, I do think you're right that like it's an opportunity. Like, if it was there a few years ago, we'd be seeing like John Wick in here, or like Mission Impossible's in here. And those are movies that people see and like in the general populace. So it's like an opportunity to kind of showcase those without like, and we came to the conclusion the Oscars did not do this. It was the Golden Globes, and I was misremembering. But it's way less like forced than doing something like a popular box office award, like, something like that. Like, it is an artistry and it is like worthy of awards, but does tend to fall in kind of the more popular categories of movies. I don't know. You know me. I'm like, let's see them all. I'm excited for the casting. I'm excited for the casting one as well. I think that's like, I'll be interested to see how they present it, because it is like such a behind the scenes kind of job, but it is so important and like such a real skill. So I'll be interested to see how they kind of go about presenting that to people and making them care.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're going to have to do a lot of storytelling to try to make people understand why that's cool. I do think the fact that it happened so far off stage, it's going to be a real challenge to try to like make it into something that people really care about. It's going to end up probably feeling like a lot of those categories that people are like, all right, can we keep this moving here? I do hope that I mean, look, like I'm full of zags today, but as like the resident like film snob, like artsy fartsy, like only watch art house movies, only watch movies from before 1980 guy, like I hope they go all out for the stunt category. I want to see a big stunt show on the ceremony. I want to see like live fight choreo, and I hope they put it later in the night. I really do. I hope they put this towards the end so that it feels more special. I hope they do some sort of big spectacle, and this kind of ties back into like what I've been ranting about all episode about, digital distribution and whatever. Like stunt choreography, despite having been, is so much couched within CGI and like all these sort of like artificial worlds, there is still something so tangibly in real life about it. And the ultimate goal of a great stunt choreography is not only to make it to be part of the storytelling experience, and every beat has to advance a character, but it also has to feel real enough that like your body feels it. And if they can bring some of that magic that Hollywood has been so historically good at to the show, I think it would really continue the mission of showcasing what makes particularly Hollywood filmmaking so superior to every other, film production outfit in the world.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm very excited about this. I want to see, like you said, I want to see live stuff, but like it's also another great opportunity for like some behind the scenes montages, like, I hate to bring up Mission Impossible again. No, I don't. But like that great like behind the scenes video of him like jumping off the cliff with the motorcycle and parachuting off, and like there's that great moment when he's at the bottom and he's like, I think I can get higher. We should do it one more time. And you feel everyone kind of be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I just like, it's a great time to just like, people love those videos. People love like seeing how the sausage is made in that way, because it just almost makes it more impressive, especially when it comes to something like stunts. But
yeah, totally. I want them to go all out. I'm here for it.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's all we've got today. But before we head out of here, do you have anything you'd like to plug? Sorry, my dog is ready for us to be done too. He's jumping to go to the bathroom. Anything you'd like to plug, Aaron, before we get out of here?
Yes, of course. My feature film debut, Withdrawal, it is coming up. We are less than 15 days away from the premiere on April 30th at 9 p.m. at the Atlanta Film Festival. There are less than 100 tickets left. We are down to our final few tickets. So if you have not secured your ticket yet, do so now. They will not be available on the day. We are heading towards a sellout. So I really hope to see you there. It's going to be a fantastic night, April 30th, 9 p.m. Sammie, what do you got to plug?
I will be there. Don't worry about it. But also, I've got a lot of Atlanta Film Festival coverage that's going to be coming out over the next couple of weeks. I've got some preview pieces, so some movies that I'm excited about. I'll have some interviews that are going to show up in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, so just keep an eye on Scene and roughdraftatlanta.com, and that's where you can find anything by me.
Amazing. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, rate, and review. Hit us with the 5 stars. Leave a few nice comments. No trash zoom. Crash zoom. Get it right. Get it right. But let us know. Are you excited about the Academy Awards stunt design category? Do you feel that Hollywood is mirroring the crumbling society in America? Please let us know. You can email us crashzoompod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Crash Zoom Podcast. I've been posting stuff there left and right. The takes are flying as always. Sammie, this has been wonderful. And until next week, I will talk to you later.
I'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Bye.